Okay, last week we went through the 10 Sefirot. I got everyone to draw a chart, a table. I see some of you have it, some of you don't. That's okay. We'll, if we need it, we'll come back to it. If need be, we can redraw it. But basically, we went through the three columns. We actually focused more on two columns of the 10 Sefirot. So we had the right side and the left side. The right side is the masculine, and the left side is the feminine. And we spent a lot of time talking about how those two sides are masculine and feminine. We also spoke about the top and the bottom being masculine and feminine, and then the middle and the bottom being masculine and feminine. So basically what we explored was that the very building blocks of reality, the very forces that make up everything in its entirety are masculine and feminine, and in different situations they're masculine and in different situations they're feminine. Now the reason why this is going to be important is because when we look at ourselves we're going to discover that we are sometimes masculine, we'll discover that we are sometimes feminine, as is the world around us. What I'd like to do tonight is spend a bit of time talking about bringing it all together. How do we bring it together, and what are some ideas, and what does this even mean, bringing things together? So let's recap. 2 weeks ago we spoke about that everything started from an infinite single entity, and then we spoke about man as a microcosm. Mankind was created both masculine and feminine, and then the masculine and the feminine were split into two components, right? And we then looked around and we could see that there is this concept of Oir and a concept of Keli, the concept of energy and the context of utility. The utility requires energy in order to work. These were different things that we explored in the week one. And we spent a long time looking at how the infinite split into dual. Then when last week we spoke about Havaya, we were speaking about different names of God, and Havaya is the reference to the everything. And we spoke about how Havaya, Yud and Hey, are masculine and feminine, and Vav and Hey are masculine and feminine. And these letters, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, make up the name of God. And so the name of God is less about the name and more about what a name is. A name is a reference to something. It's not about the name, it's about what the name refers to. So my computer is an apple. By mere definition of telling you that my computer is an apple, you already know a lot about it. You know that it's going to have certain design features. You know that the intention behind it is to be trendy, is to have a certain character to it. It's not just a computer. There's a whole back-end story that when I say apple, it's not an apple. You know you're not eating my computer, but it already tells you so much. Same with the names of Hashem. The names of Hashem don't actually mean anything except that they are references to aspects of Hashem that we want to relate to in a particular way. So Havaya, which means the infinite, the existence of all, is actually both masculine and feminine. Why that's important to know is because that means that the masculine and feminine energies exist in everything and throughout everything. So as we explore, and as we explored last week, we looked at some masculine and feminine characteristics. We looked at Chochmah, the top of the 10 Sefirot, as being a masculine characteristic. Chochmah, it was that expansive idea, that moment of an idea. It's a seminal idea in that it contains everything, and yet it is just a single drop of knowledge that contains everything, or a single drop of sperm that contains everything. Bina was feminine in that it doesn't create, it takes apart. It's moving on the Gvura axis, which means that it's about retaining and withholding and breaking it apart so every component is there, but not there lost in some expansive, exciting universe, but rather in a very, very confined and defined way. That is a very Gvura-dika way of being. Gvura access is all about definition, it's all about judgment, it's all about withholding, it's all about withstanding. Chesed is about love, flow, expansiveness, fresh thinking, new ideas, something from nothing. Hello, how are you? That's the Chesed axis. So on the Chesed axis, we've got Chochmah, which was expansive thinking. We've got Chesed, which is expansive feeling, kindness, attachment, feeling someone else's whatever it is, their pain, their happiness. But it's about not feeling it for them, it's about feeling their thing within yourself. And then the bottom of that axis was Netzach, which was a way of overcoming challenge by decimating, by destroying, by overcoming. So again, this very large approach to overcoming problems. The Gvura way is not necessarily small, but it doesn't expand. The Gvura way is very controlled. The Gvura way is very defined. Sabina is defined thinking. Gvura is constraint. It is retention as an emotion. It is distancing. It is about giving everything. It's giving everything a definition. In order to give something definition, you have to stand back. You have to behold it. You can't behold something that you're in. If you're in the MCG, you will never appreciate the size of the crowd. But when you get a bird's eye view of the MCG, you're distant from the MCG, you can appreciate the size of the crowd. Okay? Then we have the bottom of that axis is Hod. Hod is the way of dealing with things, and that is humility. And it's not just humility, it is about the humility. It is about, we called it majesty, in that it's about existing for a greater cause. So humility might be that you allow others to exist. Humility might be that you work with others in order to achieve. Humility might also be that something is not going to rub off on you. Not because you're better than it, but because you're not taking it on board. Not taking it on board. It's not about me, so I'm not taking it on board. So those are the feminine characteristics. Then we spoke about that Chabad, Chochmah bin Adas. The thought process is masculine and the emotions are feminine, because the masculine is the first step of contribution of a minuscule amount. The feminine is the retention of that and doing something with it. So if we're using the analogy of pregnancy, there is the seminal drop, and then there is the holding and the allowing for a egg to be fertilized, and then the holding onto that for 9 months until we have a child. So the process of creating a child is a long one. It requires holding. It requires a womb which will seal and not let anything out. That is feminine. So here we get this interesting dance. We haven't touched men and women. We're going to go there next week. Right now, we are going to look at why. See, when we get into men and women, then we also look at the relationship between men and women. So I don't want to do that now, because I want to do that when we've got all our ducks lined up. What I want to talk about this week are some very interesting ideas around the masculine, the feminine energies, and how we're reunifying them. Number one, I want to take you to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, Moses goes up, and there's the famous story. We've got the story of the Ten Commandments, yeah? And there is a commandment about Shabbat. There is also a commandment about honoring your parents. These are both two of the Ten Commandments. Now, the Shabbat and honoring your parents seemingly have nothing in common with each other. They seem like separate commandments. However, when we look at the two places in the Torah where the Ten Commandments are described, these two commandments seem to have different terminology each time. The first one is in the story of Jethro. Jethro is Moses' father-in-law. And that parasha, Yisro, is where we first read about the Ten Commandments. It comes up in the book of Exodus. The second time that we read about the Ten Commandments is in the book of Devarim, in Deuteronomy. And it is the parasha, and the whole book of Deuteronomy is a recounting of what happened to the Jews in the desert. Can you please stop with the cups? So Va'eschanan is where Moses repeats the story of the Ten Commandments. The thing is that the Ten Commandments, when they're repeated, are not exactly the same. Now, you would expect... Beryl, please put the cup down. Okay? you would expect that when repeating something as important as the Ten Commandments, they would be word for word the same, right? If I wanted to tell you the most important lesson in life, do you think I'd fudge up the words the second time? If someone can't remember the important things in life, then they're obviously not the important things in life. And it's not just subtlety. They're massive word differences. For example, with Shabbat, in one it says shomo, and the other one it says zacho. One says remember the Shabbos day and keep it holy. The other one says guard. Guarding and remembering are not the same thing. So what do you want me to do? Guard the Shabbos or honor the Shabbos? Because guarding is all about making sure I don't do things. Honoring sounds like it's all about what I do. In the commandment of honoring your parents, it says honor your father and your mother. Good. And it says because just as God said. What do you mean, just as God said? Obviously it says God said. Why are you telling me that? And then, a little bonus, do it and it's good for you. It'll extend your days in this world. Like, well, what's with the little reward system being built in? That wasn't quite the wording the first time. First time I was told just do it. Now I'm being told do it because it's good for me. It'll extend my time in this world. So we've got discrepancies in two of the primary commandments, two of the 10 commandments. So the Arizal, so you all get that little, we could have a whole Talmudic discussion about it. We could go down the road of the commentaries. What does this mean for Jewish law? And this leads to the different observances of Judaism on Shabbat. One is about the do's and one is about the don't do's. I'm not going there. I'm not here to talk to you about Jewish law. I mean, I really should, but I'm not going to. I want to talk to you about what the Arizal says. The Arizal was a mystic. He was a Kabbalist. In fact, he's one of the most famous Kabbalists of the last 500 years, and he's probably the most important Kabbalist in the last 2,000 years, 1,800 years. There were many important Kabbalists, but the Arizal was responsible for all versions of studied Kabbalah today. The Arizal's thinking became the mainstream Kabbalistic interpretation on reality, the Kabbalistic interpretation of what God is, and the Kabbalistic interpretation of how God, how the infinite and the finite world coexist and correlate and are one within each other. So the Arizal is a very important character in the Kabbalah world. And what I've got here is as follows. He says, number one, the whole narrative about Shabbos and the whole narrative of honoring our parents are related. In fact, it's one commandment. It's all one commandment. Yes, it's about Shabbos and yes, it's about honoring parents, but it's actually telling us a much, much bigger story that we need to be aware of. Let's first talk about Shabbos. No, let's talk about Shabbos. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Remember the Shabbat. Zachor is a masculine term. Zachor also is masculine. Zachar is male. Nekeva is female. So Zachor et Yom HaShabbat Lakatra must mean that remembering the Shabbos has something to do with masculine energy. Shamor et Yom HaShabbat, honor the Shabbos, guard the Shabbos, is feminine. Now, what we can see about Zachor is that Zachor is an action. Zachor is remember. To remember is a verb, right? When you remember something, there is an act going on. I am actively remembering. It may not be a big act, but it is a verb. You are doing something. Shamor is honor. Honoring is not a verb. Or maybe it's a passive. What's a passive verb? Still a verb? Does anyone speak English? A what? A passive term is still a verb. Okay, yes, it is something that you do, but you do it by not doing anything. Honoring something is an approach. It's not something you do. You don't do honor. You honor, but you do remember. You do have to think when you do that. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadshah tells us the things that we have to do. You need to remember Shabbos. How do you do that? By making Kiddush on Friday night and Havdalah on Saturday night. When you say Kiddush on Friday night, you are pronouncing this moment, Friday night, of the Shabbat, not a random Friday night. And you're saying now Friday ends and the Shabbat begins. When you make Havdalah, you end the Shabbat. You say now Shabbat has come to an end and Sunday begins. Behold, it is Saturday night. These are things you do. You hold a cup of wine in your hand. You light candles. You bless it all. This is a very deliberate activity of creating Shabbos. So that's how you remember that it's Shabbos, by creating Shabbos. When you're honoring Shabbos, what do? You don't do anything. What is Shabbos? When Moses went to Pharaoh in Egypt, one of the things he asked for was that the Jewish people should be allowed to have the seventh day of the week off. It would be very important for our spiritual disposition and for who we are if we didn't have to work on Saturday. Not a very good union boss, but hey, we'll fight for one day at a time. And Pharaoh said, absolutely not. When we get Shabbos, what we're told is God rested on the seventh day, and so you will rest on the seventh day. What does it mean God rested? God didn't go to sleep. God ceased to be creative. Nothing new was created on Shabbat. What happened on Shabbat? Maintenance, status quo, the continued existence of reality. What do we do on Shabbat? We move into a state of status quo. We don't do business. We don't do work. We're not even allowed to talk about it. We don't write. We don't build. We don't create. We don't cook new things. We don't do anything that's productive. We're just passive. Shamar is about just being still. The Arizal says that the ultimate moment of Shabbos is when you have exhaled, when you have finished exhaling, and you are sitting in that moment of stillness between the exhalation and the next inhalation, and you're sitting down on Shabbat morning. That is the most precise and still moment of Shabbat in your week, because nothing is happening. And your mind is clear. If your mind is clear, then on every level you're experiencing Shabbat. It's obviously not easy to experience Shabbat. That's hard work. Imagine getting yourself to a point of mental stillness. You're at the end of your breath. You aren't interested in breathing in yet. That will come in a moment. And it's Shabbat morning. It's like absolute stillness. That's the absolute moment of Shabbat. That's an extremely feminine moment because you're just still. So Shamar is feminine. Zachar is masculine. Zachar is how you do Shabbos. Shamar is how you honor Shabbos. These are the masculine and feminine sides to Shabbat. Now, in Kabbalah, there are many terms for masculine. Sometimes Abba, which means father, is masculine, and Ima is mother, is feminine. You get Mein Duchrin and Mein Nukvin, the masculine waters and the feminine waters. There are lots of different terms in different settings. Tonight I want to introduce you to Nukva, which is feminine, and Ze'er Anpin, which is masculine. Ze'er Anpin is a reference to the 6 Sefirot that are in the middle of the Sefirot chart. So all the emotions. Now last week I spoke about those being feminine. This week I'm telling you they're masculine, because if they're masculine there must be something beneath them on the chart. And there's that bottom circle of Malchut. That is Nukva. So we've got the masculine Sefirot and we've got the feminine Sefirah. The two of them will create a child. We also find another time that we've got a different term for masculine and feminine. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You ever seen in the Siddur, in the prayer book, it says the Holy One, blessed is He. Blessed be He. Not blessed be she, not blessed is she. It's very deliberately He. The Holy One, blessed is He. Because when we use the term HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is a reference to the masculine side. What is the other side of that? If that's the masculine, what's the feminine? The feminine is called Knesset Yisrael, the congregation of Israel. The congregation of Israel is not us. The congregation of Israel is the spiritual energy from which we will be born, from the womb that is Atzilut. Atzilut is the highest of the 4 worlds of 4 dimensions of reality. Atzilut is where reality begins. It's a very spiritual concept. It is a womb. From there, things will be born. Prior to it is this thing called Knesset Yisrael. Where is the womb? A womb is within a woman's body. It is not the woman. but it is characteristically feminine, and it is a part of the woman's body. Knesset Yisrael is the body which houses the womb. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the impregnator. HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Knesset Yisrael are the masculine and feminine components. So again, we're finding all these interesting masculine and feminine things across the most bizarre range of different areas. Honoring the Shabbos is nukva. Honoring the Shabbos is Knesset Yisrael. And masculine is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It is Ze'er Anpin. Now, if they are masculine and feminine and they're giving birth, what does that make them? Parents, which makes them a mother and a father. I'm not going to use the terms Abba and Imma because Abba and Imma are also masculine and feminine terms, but Abba and Imma refer to different Sefirot. So I'm going to go with the English father and mother just because it conjures up the right image. Father and mother give birth to a child. We have this commandment, one is supposed to honor their father and their mother. It's one of the commandments that we're exploring. Why do we have different terminology for it? And so when we honor the father and mother, it's obviously in the first time that the Ten Commandments say it in Parshas Yisro, it is because we have an obligation. It's very important. If anyone ever tells you, oh, Judaism is euphemistic, Judaism, Kabbalah is about the spirituality, it's got nothing to do with religion, they're talking utter narishkeit. It's nonsense. There's a whole movement of secular Kabbalah, and it's nonsense. Because Kabbalah is the spiritual depth of Judaism. You can't say it has got nothing to do with the practice of Judaism. You're right, it has nothing to do with the practice of Judaism in that you don't practice Kabbalah. Kabbalah describes what is going on when you practice Judaism. Sure, it can be academic. It's like philosophy. Being a philosopher doesn't make you a good person. But the philosophy is nothing without any actions. You can't philosophize about something if there is nothing to philosophize about. See, philosophy is going to tell us what a good society is, why we're here, how we're meant to govern ourselves, how we're meant to conduct ourselves. Beautiful. Just because you know it, it doesn't mean you're going to be a good person. It doesn't mean you're going to be a bad person. It doesn't mean anything. Doing is doing. The depth of thought is the depth of thought. But you can't say one is nothing without the other. So you can't say Kabbalah, which is the description of all that is. Kabbalah doesn't tell you about God. Kabbalah tells you about godliness. It tells you about the spirituality. It's not telling you about the source of light. It is telling you about the nature of light. It's very much, people that get amazed, Kabbalah, but Kabbalah never touches the number one. Kabbalah picks up from number two. Or more accurately, Kabbalah starts from number one and takes you to 1,000,000, but it never goes to prior to one, because that's not what the field of research of Kabbalah is. So when you get the Torah, it has instructions of how to live as a Jew. It has the instructions of how to live as a spiritual person and all that jazz. Wonderful. That's what it is. When we discuss that the Ten Commandments are the Ten Commandments, when it says honor your parents, it means honor your parents. Now that we've established that it means honoring your parents, what we want to do is also understand what is the mystical idea of honoring your parents. And the mystical side of honoring your parents is honor the mother and the father, honor the nukva and the Ze'er Anpin, honor HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Knesset Yisrael. So, when we say this commandment, just as Shabbos was masculine and feminine, so we see in the Ten Commandments, in the mitzvah of honoring your parents, it's also masculine and feminine. And just as Shabbos wasn't just Shabbos, it was also about the energies of the universe, so too honoring your parents is not just about honoring your parents, it's about honoring the energies of the universe and making sure that if we do that, L'man Yarichon Yamecha, it's going to allow you to live many days. So on the surface, what that's saying is if you honor your parents, you're going to live a long life. What does it mean in context of the Kabbalah of the masculine and feminine energies? So, L'man Yarichon Yamecha, in order for it to elongate your days is plural. The reference of days is to the 6 days of the week. The the 6 days of the week, not Shabbos, because Shabbos is already an elongated day. The 6 days of the week correspond to the 6 Sefirot. The 6 Sefirot, the 6 emotions. If we honor those emotions, if we honor those energies, then we bring the 6 days of the week into the longest day, which is Shabbat, which is a state of eternal peace, a state of eternal balance, a state of eternal enlightenment. So if we honor the process of masculine and feminine, if we honor the mother and father, then we're going to end up having long days. We're going to end up in a state of perfection. If we honor our physical mother and father, we're going to live a long life. Long life is meant to be some sort of reward. We all want to live happily ever after. We all want to live a long life. No. Who doesn't want to live a long life? There's a new book that came out in the last few months, Homo Deus. It's written by the same guy who wrote Sapien. You know the book Sapien? It's written by an Israeli philosopher. I think is based out of Cambridge or Oxford. I'm quite sure it's one of the larger English universities. And it's about the history of man. Homo Deus is about the destiny of man. And the point of the book, the author wants to say that mankind is striving to live forever and healthily. And he's predicting that we'll get there. We will get to a point that we will be able to heal all maladies, and we will create limbs, we'll create cells, and we're just going to live forever. We'll never lose our mind, we'll never lose our health, we'll remain in a perpetual state of perfection. Read the book to understand how. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if I want to live forever, at least not in the world that we're currently. Imagine we live forever in the current state. Oh, it'd be terrible. It'd be a disaster. But instead of not living forever, let's fix the world. So the commandment says, if you honor your mother and father, you're going to live forever. You're going to live longer. The spirituality is if we honor the masculine, we honor the feminine, then the 6 days will move into Shabbos. So it means that not only will we live forever, but the world will move into a state of eternal balance. So when we have Shomer and Zochar, that's the Shabbos, that's the unified state of masculine and feminine. When we have the Kabbalah Savicha V'Asimecha, L'man Yarichon Yamecha, then what we've got is a path of how do we get to Shabbos? Honor our parents and we'll get there. Now, let's try to understand what is this? I keep harping on honor, but what are we honoring? What is this masculine and feminine that we're honoring? We have to honor the energy flow in the universe. We have to realize that everything that exists is not just because it happens. Where do you come from? The stork didn't drop you off. Let me tell you. You ready for this? Your parents had a bit much wine one night. 9 months later, you popped out. Maybe there was a bit more consciousness, maybe there was a little less consciousness, but whatever. But that's where we come from. We've been invested in. When that commandment says honor your parents, there's a reason why. Because these are two people that took a conscious, deliberate moment in their life to decide they want to bring a child into this world. And then they brought it into the world, irrespective of what our real parents did, whether we have good parents or bad parents to everyone here. I'm not talking about us. I'm assuming everyone in this room has good parents, that everyone online has good parents. The hypothetical good parents. So what does a good parent mean? They've invested in us. They've spent millions of dollars on us in education, in food, in medical, in clothing, in mortgage or rent, and a car to drive us and everything. They've spent a fortune of money, and then I don't know how many kilojoules of energy, constant energy, sleepless nights, absolute love, tears, care, compassion, all that. So that commandment is saying, why do we need to honor them? Because they have invested in us. It's the menschlich thing to do. It's menschlich to realize that things don't happen just from nothing. It's menschlich to realize that everything that exists is because there's been an investment. The chairs we're sitting on have timber. They have polyester, sponge. They've got cotton coating. They've got steel legs. Let's just think about this. The steel came from the earth. There were people that mined it. There were companies that refined it. melted it down, molded it. The timber frame of the seat comes from a tree, which could have taken 50 years to grow. 50 years ago, they were already working on your chair by planting a seed. Billions of years ago, the steel was placed in the earth. So, just think about, go with the most incredible version of how your chair came to be here. Then some industrial engineer goes through 6 years of university. How many years of wondering what they're going to do before that? And then they design a chair. And then you've got petroleum, which leads to the manufacturing of poly-anything. So we've got people who are on rigs digging deep into the core of the earth on some verstunkene remote place in an ocean where there is no land. And this person's bringing up black oil from the core of the earth. Also, you could have a chair. It's worth a lot more than the $150 that we paid for the chair that you're sitting on. The chair we're sitting on is worth millions of dollars. So I'm just dramatizing so we realize nothing in this world just comes from nowhere. Everything, the food that you eat, the clothing that you wear, everything is incredible. We have to think about that process. We have to honor the process. Honor doesn't mean I say thank you to the steel work and I say thank you to the petroleum rig guy and I don't say thank you to the guy who I think I said thank you to the guy that sold us the chair because he did us a good deal. But at least have reverence for it. There are comedians that talk about aeroplanes. Airplane jokes, I think, are the most common. That's the natural go-to. If you're a comedian, you've got to have an airplane spiel because it's easy. There are so many things to mock. But there are some comedians that talk about the people who kvetch on airplanes. They kvetch like, it's too cramped, the flight's too long, the in-flight entertainment didn't work, the food wasn't so good. And I've heard a few different comedians say, just Ribboni shel olam. I don't think any of them said that. That's my little take on it. Ribboni shel olam. You're flying on a machine made of metal through the air at 1,000 kilometers an hour. Just stop and think about how incredible that is. And you're fetching about the chicken's dry or that you've got to be in this stupid cocoon for 10 hours. You're going to get from one place to another in a time that once upon a time no human even dreamt. And then when they did, they were excited that they could do it in under 2 months. And you're doing it in 10 hours and you're complaining. Your seat doesn't recline. I would be amazed that the plane's not falling into the ocean. It weighs who knows how many tons. How many brainy physicists, how many people stopped and thought about how we're going to get this metal box to fly through the air? It's a miracle. It's the miracle of flight, and we're worried about the chicken is too dry. We're so unappreciative of what is amazing around us. Now, I do this very seriously with my body. When we pray in the morning, we're meant to take a breath and go, oh my gosh, my lungs are responding to the air. My heart is beating. It's like if you think about how amazing the human body is, it's an incredible thing, the human body. We should be appreciative. I'm not saying, and then you won't be upset with what you've got. You'll be upset with what you've got and you want more, but at least you'll still find happiness in what you do have. There's nothing wrong with wanting more, but let's also be happy with what we do have and how incredible it is, the miracle of life. And that's why I encourage people to study sciences, because science allows us to appreciate the complexity and the nuance of the universe. Anyway, whoever studies science will be enlightened, and whoever studies science objectively will be appreciative, and they will live happily ever after. That's my opinion. That's my spiritual opinion. Because when you study, in my opinion, when you study science, you discover how great God is. How great God is. That this incredible thing, I've got a choice of two beliefs. Either way, it's a belief. I've got a choice of two beliefs. One belief is it's a fluke with pretty lousy odds. No one would ever bet that this would happen. The other option is that it was created. Either way, it's incredible. So I go with the created version. If you've got philosophical issues, what are you going to do 5,000 years? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's just decide. Did every one of these things happen by chance? It's a belief. You can say yes or no. And either way, you're going to struggle. Because if it's by chance, then there's no meaning in anything. Man-made creation, meaning. No one wants to live a meaningless life. If it's God, too hard to grasp. Don't want a God. So we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. Or how did the fluke happen? It's even better. So we can go into the philosophy of creationism and all that. I'm not going there. What I'm saying is, let's be amazed by how we got here, and we have to honor the fact that there is a process. There is a flow of energy that allows the momentum of reality to take place. Now, the two primary energies are masculine and feminine. The masculine and feminine energies give birth. That is their nature. When they're unified, it is incredible. So many of you have a pen and paper. I'd like you to draw a shape. And we're going to now draw a new diagram. I want you to draw a two-dimensional donut. A two-dimensional donut is like like a Homer Simpson type donut with the hole in the middle. But just don't draw the donut. It's basically two circles. A larger circle with another circle in the middle. So it's a big zero. And I want you to draw a vertical line just between the top circle and the middle circle. The top of the outer circle and the middle. Just so there's a line at the top. Okay? Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Exactly. Just what Adam's done. And you can do this at home. I'll wait while you go and get a pen. Dun, 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 dun. All right, and we're back. See, if one of you people online would have sponsored this year, I would have put a 30-second ad break in. And as a result, you probably ran, you tripped over your chair, you cracked your head open, only to draw some nourisher, chazisher, Homer Simpson donut. Okay, now that we've got it, we're back. So you've got this circle. Moving to the left. Just start drawing an arrow, just so when you look at this diagram, you're always looking to the left. So from where that line is, just draw an arrow going left. As if, yeah, perfect. So it's as if we've got an energy flow moving to the left from that dot point, from that beginning point, that line. That line represents the beginning. You will notice that there is something right before the beginning. What is that? The end. See that? The beginning and the end are the same point. The end is wedged into the beginning. So if I remove that line, this circle has no beginning, it has no end. I've drawn an arbitrary beginning, and as a result, I've created an arbitrary end. Now, the beginning represents, prior to the beginning, there is no circle. Okay? This circle sits on a piece of paper. That paper, you see, if I said, what was before the circle, you'd be struggling. What's before the circle? Before the circle, there was no drawing. There was just the paper. The paper now allows for a circle to exist. And the circle has a beginning. In the beginning, there was the infinite. And then there was a beginning of where the infinite allowed for a circle. And then the circle allows for a momentum of energy. We will call that energy O. So imagine your whole circle, your whole donut is filling with light from where you've drawn the line. It's filling with light. Now draw a whole lot of dots in the circle, sprinkles, if you will. Right? Draw lots of dots. Now, good. Those dots represent the kalim. Those dots represent... All right, guys, you've got enough sprinkles on yours. Those dots represent things that... Imagine each of those dots was a colorful prism. And the light passing through hits that prism. What comes out of each of those prisms? Color. Imagine you've got a red dot, you've got a green dot, you've got a blue dot, you've got a yellow dot. Then as your white light passes through, you end up with red light, yellow light, blue light, green light, maroon light, mauve light, turquoise light, black light, grey light, whatever colours. I know they're not colours, they are for my analogy. In the beginning, though, there was this thing called tohu. There was the chaos. And that was that the light was meant to pass through each of those dots, but those dots didn't work together. Those dots didn't allow for the absorption and reallocation of light. They tried to hold on to the light. They didn't work together. And therefore, when blue light went into green light, when white light went in, each of those dots absorbs and collapses and breaks. And what you've actually got are dots. These are the dots. These are the fragments. Now, if there's this strong momentum of light being pushed through, what's going to happen to all those dots? They're going to get carried on in the momentum, right? So now let's just break away from the paper. In the beginning, there was an energy output of Or. The energy output of Or, the energy output of light, was infinite. And the purpose was for it to pass through different prisms that would give the light definition. They're called the Sefirot. Each Sefirah tried to hold on to the light and not allow it to keep going. Each Sefirah wanted to be the light to the exclusion of everything else. Not only that, the light was so forceful, it led to some of those were able to allow the light to leave them, in which case they've given the light character, others didn't. And as a result, the light is stronger than any of the containers, and it's like a tidal wave. When you have a tidal wave, whatever gets in the way becomes a part of the wave. You don't say, ooh, there's a ship on the tidal wave, there's a ship in the tidal wave. In fact, there's a lot of stuff. There's sediment in the tidal wave. We don't care, we just talk about the wave. When the tsunami hit Japan, no one said, and a ship went through a building. Yeah, a ship did go through the building, but that's because the ship was a part of the tidal wave. Don't get lost in the nano. There was a yacht in the tidal wave. There was this massive wall of water that just destroyed villages and towns. Whether destroyed by moving a car into a building or it was destroyed because a boat went through a track makes no difference. It was a wave. And the wave of energy that has gone through the process that we've called Tzimtzum and that we've spoken about in the past just takes all the elements until it gets to a point at around 1 o'clock on your chart. So it's gone all the way around to 1 o'clock. That is the beginning of existence as we know it. Atzilut, Bri, Yetzir, Asiya, the four worlds. Now, when it gets there, we get to creation, we get to existence. If I would begin existence there, what does that mean existence already has within it? It has the infinite energy, as well as all the aspects that have existed prior but don't seem to have made an impact. Which means we've got a history of chaos, and somehow that chaos was brought to order. That order is called tikkun. Tikkun. Tikkun means fix, letaken, to fix, or to order, or to heal, depending on what context you're using the word. At some point, there was a catchment place that was able to withhold the light because it allowed the light to flow. That point was called Malchus. It contains and funnels the light. And it catches the different pieces of sediment there. And the sediment, depending on how big it is, lands on different landing points in your circle. So you can draw 3 more lines after that 1 o'clock line as we approach 12 o'clock. And those can be the 4 lines of Atzilus, Bri, Yetzir, Asiya, the 4 worlds. And the bigger pieces get caught up in the earlier lines, and the smaller pieces of sediment, of the fragmentation, get caught up in the last line. So now we've got things happening in an orderly way. There's no more breaking apart. Masculine and feminine are working together. And we end up with the existence of our world. Our world is somewhere between just after 12 and 12. We are the end of the line. We are the end of destiny. We haven't reached the end of destiny, but in our time, may we be blessed, we will reach the end of destiny. And that will be where the end of the circle meets the beginning of the circle. Now, all of history will continue to exist in a historical context. What happened 50 years ago happened 50 years ago. The Holocaust. The Holocaust happened. Just because we live in 2017 doesn't mean the Holocaust didn't happen. Second Temple in Jerusalem. Just because it happened 1800 years ago doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's completely inaccessible. Adam and Eve, they happened. It's not accessible to us, a long time ago. And the crazy explosions of Tohu early in the system also happened. Everything that happens now is informed by everything that has happened prior, but they're all historical. We live in a world of order. What that means is that the purpose of the Jew is to create order in the world. Not order through government, not order through police. That's an order of society. Any human being should be able to do that. We are here to create spiritual order, to honor the masculine and the feminine, to make sure that the masculine and feminine energies are coexisting and operating with dignity and respect for each other. I'm not talking about men and women yet. Men and women we'll get to next week. I'm right now talking about the masculine and feminine. The masculine and feminine energies need to have their place. Let me give you an example of where things do not have their place. You're very hungry. It's 11 o'clock at night. So you microwave a stale donut. I don't know how many things you're doing wrong there. I'm sorry to make anyone feel guilty. Pumping yourself with microwaves, x-rays, eating a donut. I can't think of any redeeming nutritional value in that. Not only is it a donut, but it's an old donut. And it's like got this, who knows what. Oh, and you're eating it. You're pumping yourself up with energy. You're pumping yourself up with food types that are terrible for the body. I'm hungry and now I'm not hungry anymore. But you've completely messed up your body. You've completely messed up the food. It's all wrong. Yeah, I feel full, but you're also completely unhealthy in that moment. You could have peeled a carrot, peeled a cucumber. You're getting the right amount of fiber, you're getting a bit of fluid, you're getting some vitamins. That would have been balance. Either way you're eating, but because you ate appropriately or inappropriately is whether you're honoring your body or you're not honoring your body. If you don't honor your body, you're going to get diabetes. That's odd. You honor your body, you're not going to get diabetes. Maybe you will, but you know what I'm saying, right? When you honor things, they fit. When you don't honor things, they don't fit. You can force them to fit, but it doesn't mean they're fitting. I've seen it. I've played with the kids. Things weren't working. I started forcing them, and then they stick. You see, it works. And they know, no, it doesn't work. You've forced it. You've jammed it. It's not real. No, I say it's working. I say it's working. I say it's working because I've jammed it. So there's a way of honoring. You can do a jigsaw puzzle, make all the pieces fit because you've stomped on it, or you make it fit because you put the right piece in the right place. If you do the right piece in the right place, then you've honored the puzzle. When we honor the system, when we honor where we come from, when we honor the world and we operate it and we utilize it in the way that it's been designed, then not only does it not break, but it actually becomes complete. It becomes whole. It becomes appropriate. If you look at the circle that you've got in front of you, we're heading towards a point of where we will have honored anything. What happens when everything is in its right place? What happens when everything is where it's meant to be? What happens when everything that was broken has now been fixed? What will the world be like when there is not only no more war, not only are we in a state of peace, but we're in a state of happiness? When Michael Bloomberg became the mayor of New York City, he stamped out crime. He brought street crime right down. When Michael Bloomberg left his office, as in he was no longer the mayor of New York City, within 4 years, the crime rate had gone up again. Not to where it was prior, but it had gone back up. So did Michael Bloomberg solve New York crime? Yes and no. Michael Bloomberg exported criminals, just chucked them out of New York. It wasn't just about sending them to prison, chucked them out of New York. But he didn't remove the criminal element from New York. He didn't destroy the attitude of crime. He just made it really not worth the while of anyone to be a criminal. It wasn't worth your while to be a criminal in New York. Michael Bloomberg stamped out the activity of crime, but he didn't eradicate crime from New York, which is why when Michael Bloomberg left and the commissioners left, and there were changes, and there were new politics about fighting crime, crime went back up. So it's not just about creating order in the world, getting into a place of coexistence. It's not what we are aiming for. If we aim for coexistence, we're aiming for mediocrity. What we're aiming for is for perfect fitting, recognition of each puzzle piece of its neighbors, and that its neighbors are making it look beautiful. Every piece of a puzzle should honor the other pieces that make it look beautiful. So it doesn't just fit, but it looks amazing. As the world gets to a place of tikkun olam, as the world gets to a place of perfection, it will end up in the b'malchus shin daled yud. It will end up becoming that of the infinite. It will become more than just a perfect place. It will never be able to regress because it will go back to where it was prior to any of the dots in your circle. Prior to any corruption in the system is what the new reality will be. We won't be informed by our past. We will be informed by where we were prior to our past. And what we'll have created is perfection of our past. That's what we're doing. That's called tikkun, bringing absolute balance of the masculine and feminine energies into our life and into the world. I'm going to leave you with something, and then we're going to continue next week. Let's come back to us. Let's come back to us. We're humans, a collection of men and women sitting in this room. And we're like, okay, so I get it. I get the hypothetical. I get the philosophy of what you're saying, Menachem. I get we're meant to be balancing and honoring. How do I do that? Okay, I've spoken about mitzvot. Good. But how do I really do it in context of I'm a male, I've got women in my life, or I'm a woman, I've got men in my life, friends, parents, children, siblings, spouse, partner, whatever. We've got we've got people in our life. What does it mean? So before I tell you what it means, let's talk about our inner masculine and feminine. Because I said we are both masculine and feminine. And women are not more feminine and men are more masculine. That's narish. That's not true. You could be highly feminine and be a man. You could be highly masculine and be a woman. And it doesn't mean you're a tough woman. A masculine woman doesn't work in Bunnings. And a feminine man is not homosexual. It's not gay. That's got nothing to do with it. That's a whole other discussion, a fascinating discussion, important discussion. But that's not what it is. When we spoke about masculine and feminine, we spoke about chesed and gvura, Chabad and midos, mind, emotion, flow, definition. Feminine means that you tend towards one of those more than the other. Feminine could be that when it's the option of emotional response or intellectual response, we go for emotional response. Plenty of men like that. Plenty of women like that. You can have very, very intellectual human beings. They turn everything into an intellectual equation. Plenty of women like that. Plenty of men like that. This is why a woman can be a CEO or a company director as much as a man can. Because what it takes to be a CEO or a company director is an approach to how you process information, to how you can place yourself in it, or how you can suspend yourself. It's got nothing to do with being a man or a woman. It's got to do with personality type. Next week we'll explore, is it more common amongst men or is it less common amongst women, etc. We'll discuss that next week, whether that's myth or fact according to Kabbalah. Not only is it that, but are you a flow type of person or are you a defined type of person? Are you a emotional spherist or are you a producer? Are you able to create or are you only able to plan? These are our masculine and feminine energies. And I've discussed this in the past. You go on YouTube and watch our videos on it, on personality analysis based on the Sefirot. But when we talk about that, we need to get our masculine and feminine. And for that, we go into the realm of baby making, because that's where Kabbalah always goes when discussing masculine and feminine. Kabbalah always goes to baby making. What is the order of creating a child? First, the male must emit, then the female must receive and fertilize, and then retain, and then give birth. That is how it happens. First there is the masculine input, then there is the feminine receiving. Let me give you a very, very simple balance of balancing your inner masculine and feminine energy. We said Chabad, the intellectual process, is masculine. We said Chagas and Nahi, our emotional capacity and our capacity to do things, are feminine. We all have the masculine, we all have the feminine. We must always have the Mayach Shalit al Halev. We must always have that the mind comes ahead and is able to control the impulse. We spoke about this at dinner tonight. My kids are in the back. They can bear witness to this discussion. Sometimes you feel like you need to really use a word that's inappropriate. You feel like it. Am I right, guys? Everyone online agrees. Sometimes you feel like you have to use a word. And that word may be a very, very disturbing word because it was created and invented and made up purely to hurt feelings. It has no other benefit. It's not like a word like stomach, which is a word that was created to describe a part of the body. It's not like urine, which is, again, something that it can be used in a dirty way, but it wasn't created to be an offensive, dirty word. It's to describe the flow that comes out when you're expelling liquid. But then there are words which we're not going to use in tonight's class because they have no redeeming factor, and they seem to be the ones that we use because such is the nature of taboo words that we use them when we have been pushed to the limit. We use those words. Those words can't be used, but I really want to. Emotion will always let you use those words. I feel I need to express myself. There's no checking that. The mental capacity that we have will assess, should we be using such language? Yes, I know you're very angry, but as we discussed tonight at the dinner table, sometimes you feel like killing people. And for whatever reason, you make a very quick mental calculation that's probably not wise to kill them. Right? We've all agreed as a family that we're not going to kill people even in fits of rage. Well, from now on, we're not going to. What was. From now on, we're not doing it. So we must always live a life where we are mindful, where we are of mental awareness and mental presence, and then we will decide whether or not the emotional response which is welling up inside should be expressed or not. This doesn't mean we turn emotions on and off. It's not like, oh, somebody died. Let me think about whether I should be sad. No. It's somebody died. I'm feeling sad. Is it correct to be sad? Well, it's a person's father. That is very sad. I will allow the emotion to progress. It was actually someone's pet ant that died. Their pet ant died. I'm not sure if the sudden outburst of tears and venom and sadness and mixed emotions is the appropriate one. I can't control it. Go and see a psychologist. The mental process isn't there to turn emotions on or off. You can use mental processes to turn emotions on and off. But the mental process is to govern the emotion, to govern the impulse. And mastery is where we always get it right, where we never swear, where we never use a dirty word, because we are always holding on to the awareness and the impulse control. And it's nonsense. Anyone that says they don't have impulse control, let me give you, there's a rabbi in America, his name's Shais Taub, and I once heard him give a fantastic analogy for impulse control. Have you ever felt the feeling where a cough is building up inside you, but you're talking to someone and you're like 4 centimeters away from them? So you're looking at them and they're going, yeah, and then we went to Portugal. It was the next stage of our cruise. And you're just going, and they go, and then we went, you don't just suddenly go, you feel the cough, you go one moment, and you cover your mouth and you cough to the side. You felt it coming, and even when it was coming, you were able to hold it in. You suck it in, you do whatever. We tell our kids the same thing with burps, with other bodily functions. You can control it if you want to. The human is designed to control almost everything. Almost everything. Sure, there are a few things that we can't. But most of the things that we say we can't, we actually can. And we need to practice Merchal Tal Lev. That's the masculine side of us coming first, followed by the feminine side of us. That is the mayach, the masculine ahead of the feminine, the impulse. Now this has nothing to do with people. Because, as we're going to see, often when we talk about people, we think we're talking about masculine and feminine spirituality, and we're actually talking about chauvinism and sexism. And we use mysticism to pardon or justify or explain. But what we will discover is that being that we are a group of men and women, we are a group of masculine and feminine. Because we are both masculine and feminine, we have to come in at something. It's all about child creating. If your life, guys, stop it. If your life was about do men come first or women come first, you've missed the point. Because remember, it wasn't about mayach comes before lave. It wasn't that your mind comes before your impulse, that the intellectual process comes before impulse. Because it was never about that. It was about wanting to have a discussion with someone about their trip to Portugal. In part of that discussion, you make sure not to cough in their face. But it's always about the child. What's the child? The discussion. If your life is about do men come first or women come first, you're already stuffed. Because you've already missed the point. The point is the child. The question is, how do I get the balance to make sure I've always got a good child on my hands? Next week, we're going to learn about the middle column of the Sefirot, which is the child. And then from there we'll understand the masculine and we'll understand the feminine role-playing in this world, of our roles in this world. Not so much our roles in context of society. We shouldn't be spending more than 5 minutes on that. But rather our roles in context of each other, of our respect, and the way we view ourselves as men and as women. So next week we're really going to, I want to spend a bit more time like I did in the first week. I want to spend a bit more time looking at the history of chauvinism and sexism, because I find it brilliant, I find it fascinating how society has conveniently gone down that path. We're actually designed to go down that path because it's an egocentric path. We're designed to naturally err to the side of ego. So once we realize it's ego, we realize we have to challenge it, which is unnatural. But altruism there's a natural altruism, but to get back to the beginning of the circle is not going to happen naturally. We have to work to get there. You don't naturally fix things. You naturally break things. To fix it is actually a whole avodah. It's a whole piece of work, which we'll talk about next week. The boy in the red jumper in the back, yes.
Isn't like male and female in the Torah like a hey at the end is female, but then how come there's like different words?
So he asks a good question. Why in Hebrew do we have masculine and feminine words? And that is because everything in the Torah and everything in the world is either masculine or feminine. So all words will be either masculine or feminine. What you may have missed if you would have joined us a couple of weeks ago, young man, and I'm loath to repeat myself, is that Ish is Aleph Yud Shin and Isha is Aleph Shin Hey. What is the common letters? Aleph Shin. What does Aleph Shin mean? Aish, fire. What is the separate letters? What do they make when you put them together? Yud and Hey. What's that? What's Yud and Hey? The name of Hashem. When the masculine and the feminine, which are separate, come together, they discover that both of them hold Hashem inside them. And when they come together and they respect that, then they unify Hashem into a common fire. What does fire do? It unifies everything. It melts everything. It burns everything. All the flames are one. There is no strong element of the fire. The fire is fire. And it's a complete unification when Ish and Isha recognize each other and come together, not just appreciate each other from afar. Then you get the Eish Ka. Make sense? Chap? Good. Anyway, we'll talk more about it. Good night. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anne.